exactly.
Well, it's so nice to meet you.
Right?
Yeah, this just feels like I felt I met you spirit to spirit, but now here we get to meet face to face, and I am so happy to meet you, Beth.
Thank you. I feel the same way. I've been looking forward to it, and it does feel like, um, we know each other so well. How is it that we're just having this first face to face? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it 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 is quite surreal,
Truly.
right?
True.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so profound.
Yeah.
This whole experience. The only thing you really told me that you suffered with was long COVID and gut issues, but there was so much more like emotional and physical healing that took place. So I have lots of notes here. And first of all, I want to start with right from the beginning when you weren't even listening to the recording yet. And I was connecting in Phoenix and you were connecting in California. And here I'm feeling, I walked into this room and it felt like a surgery room and it was so cold. Tell me what happened on your end at that same time.
Well, when we started the healing, um, before you and I had any oral contact, and I was just laying there listening to you, even before you came on, I was aware of being freezing cold. I mean, like cellularly cold. And I was lying on my bed. I knew that I was gonna lie on my bed for the whole first hour and just be with who knew what, and that I was gonna stay lying on my bed and listen to the healing through your voice and through your imagery. And, I had to get up and turn on the heat because there was no way that I could have stayed present, it was that cold. Um, so when you said almost immediately that you walked back into the room and the room was a surgical cold, it rang true to me. And I'd have to say for the first hour, um, I I can only tell you this in retrospect. So much was going on that I had no idea was happening. I simply stayed present, and I'd say that however many months later and however many months of, this being unfolding on a regular basis, and however many months of this giving me an opportunity to deeply reflect on what this was all about, it's very clear to me that the whole thing was below thought. One of the reasons it made such an impact on me is because there was no thought whatsoever. So it was the first hour of just simply lying there, and the second hour being impacted by an energetic force force of spirit that not for a moment did it not ring true, even though I wasn't expecting any of it, even though I hadn't experienced it the first hour, even though it completely all took me by surprise. And I ended up with this like, whoa, so much more happened than I had any idea whatsoever.
Well, that's the beautiful thing is you had no expectations. You just kind of let go. That's what you're saying. You just let everything go. And at that moment, then you allowed everything just to come to you how it was. And listening to the first hour, you're by yourself, you're not hearing me. Second hour, you're turning on the recording and hearing it all. And you kind of blend it, going, wait a minute, I was cold, she was cold. I was having this sensation, she was having this sensation. And we both end up being like one at that moment,
Right. Right.
right? And
Exactly.
and that's the profound thing is like then when you listen to it go, wait, this is this, we were really connected.
Exactly.
And so let's talk about this a little bit. Let's go into the session where God takes you, and I just thought this was the most profound thing ever. It makes me almost cry right now. Where he shows you two mirrors. And I get to witness this on my end as it's facilitating through me.
Mm.
And so I'm touched at what I'm seeing and feeling emotionally, but having to walk you through it. So, do you want to describe what transpired and what you felt as that was happening?
Um, there's actually a few things that happened even before this moment, but when God showed up, everything in me, this is actually very emotional. Everything in me was like, of course, of course. So, one of the things that God suggested was looking in a full length mirror and seeing myself as I was before I developed long COVID. And the experience was the best way I can describe this is if you see something in Technicolor, it has a richness, it has a fullness, it has a dimension of color and a dimension of depth, of depth. And so what seeing myself in that state of feeling and being healthy was an energetic reminder that I had not felt in the whole however long it was at that point. I think I was 2 years in of not feeling well and really not feeling well day in and day out. So there was this, visceral cellular remembering of, "Oh, this is what health feels like," and getting to look in the mirror and saying, "This is what health looks like," you know?
I saw that too, and I it was interesting because you looked at one mirror and you could see that this is myself now, and you kind of stepped over to the right and you saw your healthy self, but your healthy self held your hand
Yeah,
and you two embraced, and it was like, let's blend the two. Let's go back to this state of being. Almost like we're going to create this as your new reality, right? And I can remember you embracing, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so, so profound. And the way you described it, it's like it touched you to your core. You cannot deny what you felt. Like that doesn't lie to you.
exactly.
Um, so at that moment, I felt like you took your power back.
Yes, because there was something very automatic that was going on in that whole scenario of me looking in the mirror, seeing myself beforehand healthy, stepping to the side, looking at myself in the mirror as I looked now, and it was like like black and white, um, shrunk version of how it looks to me right now, of how I look to myself right now, and I felt a very I don't I have a feeling you might have said something along the lines, but to me, it felt very automatic. Very automatic. I turned so that we faced each other, and what felt very automatic is both a taking of each other's hands and my healthy self putting her hands on my face, and something deep in me moved me to merge the sick portion, merge into the healthy version. And I don't know exactly when in the session, but I think it was right there that I was able to touch into a level of energy that I have not felt, having been very traumatized as a child, having been so far removed from my body, having been sick for so long, and it's like being in a sick body, unsafe. And there was something about that coming together that began to loosen an energy that I was not aware was alive in me. I hadn't been aware that it had been this a lot. This, I mean, I've always had an energy, but I have not felt this level of energy. Like this is an all rightness bodily.
I got the chills while you say this, and it's so well said.
Yeah.
Until you go through something like that, can you explain it in this depth,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Um, the other thing, which I'll say something now, and then at the end we'll say why this was so spectacular. So for anyone listening, stay tuned for the end because it's a big aha moment. So I'm watching you and I describe you. And I said, wow, you're wearing this long black dress. Looks kind of formal. Like this is some kind of celebration. Like this is, and we are celebrating, we're celebrating you at that moment. But it was just like so matter of fact, nothing didn't mean anything to me at the time. So we'll get back to that later because that was just like what? Right? Exactly. So now, as God was working in the room, and the spiritual surgeons are working in the room, and they're working on your body, and they're telling you, no, self love is helping you heal the gut, and they're kind of fluffing things out of the body. And I hear this nurse say, oh, this is my favorite part. And I described her, seeing her as like her skin was a little darker and she had a round face. And I was like, and I'm like, why am I describing her? Because maybe you'll see her. But when you heard me say that, what did that make you feel?
When you described the nurse and the joy in the nurse's experience of like thoroughly enjoying this kind of like fluffing of things. I didn't particularly see her, but it warmed my heart. There was something, it's almost like the kind of adorable affection. Like, I know what it's like to love what you do. And it also gave me a sense of like, oh, pay attention because something's being loosened here and, just fluffed up and out. And so I felt aligned with her. And you had mentioned that she was getting rather shy. She was blushing because you were talking about her. And so it's just sort of like a wink, like, I see you. I didn't see her, but I got the energy.
So you felt it. So sometimes we don't see her in our normal eye, but we see the vision in our mind's eye, right? And
Good.
so that little wink, yeah, that's how I felt too. Like yeah, this is great. And we're all connected watching.
We're all connected and we're all connected doing this. I think that's what it really touched in me is like, yeah, we are all in this together right now. Like, wow, and thank you. I
It
mean,
just made it so real, right? I love it when they show up and sometimes they're really scared to like say anything. At one point, God came to your feet. Can you describe what you felt when God was at the foot of the table?
so at one point, um, I don't know whether it was only because you mentioned that God was at my feet or whether I energetically could feel it, but instantaneously I was deeply moved, and everything in me automatically got up and went to embrace God in a way that um, how would I describe this? In a way that and I'm using the word God, and it can be used in so many different ways, but I'm very comfortable with the word God because it feels so personal to me. And my whole life, I have felt a personal relationship of some sort with God. And so to have God be there in that moment um, was like Ah, you. Ah, you. So I was immediately drawn to sit up and fully embrace. The healing has had a life of its own over the months, and it has shown up in dreams and it has shown up in the life lived. And this one particular moment is one of those that showed up in a dream that was um, extremely meaningful.
So it kind of just brought everything together for you. And
Yeah.
so God, it's like God knew you've had that relationship, you've had those dreams, and He brings it all back into this one moment. Like, wow. Um, I'm going to step back before we go. What happened, when God stepped aside? Because before that, your grandmother had showed up.
Yes.
And this was very meaningful for you. And we didn't ask grandma to show up, she just showed up. And what did that feel like when grandmother showed up?
At the very beginning, you mentioned that my grandmother showed up and that she was standing at my right side and was soothing my right thigh. And something in me went, oh, of course. Of course. Even though if you had asked me who I thought might show up or who I would want to show up, it wouldn't have crossed my mind. And I think I mentioned to you in my follow-up that someone along the line years ago had said that my grandmother was an important spirit in my life, and it didn't ring. There wasn't a resonance in me. And having her there in that moment, and again, I don't remember if this is what went through me as I was lying there with her touching me or whether it came to me after. But if it wasn't for this grandmother, I would not be alive in this life because my mother was attempting to go through an abortion, and her mother convinced her to not do that. So the mere presence of the one being that was responsible for me being here shows up first off. So it's like, Um, I was appreciative. I was appreciative and I was deeply moved. I was moved.
When
Yeah.
you shared with me that after in an email, it brought me to tears because she was there to protect you and to support you during this session, just like she had always been there to protect you even before you were born. And there comes a point now where I understand why she was there to protect you and kind of be behind you and support you. Because after the embrace that God gave you, I was kind of taken back because He kind of moved and a being showed up. And I was like shocked, kind of like moving my eyes back and forth, like, what? Oh, this is her dad. And I didn't know the feeling I got was like, should he not be here? Like I felt almost a little uncomfortable. And why are you here? It wasn't like he showed himself in a healthy state and younger, but I still had this hesitance.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe the importance of, here's grandma, but why would she be there in this moment with your father showing up too?
So at the moment that God stepped aside and you said, there's a man showing up, and I think it's your father, and I could hear in your voice, like, I don't know that this is an okay thing to be happening. There was something that the way you were describing it, it's like this felt a little bit like off script. Not that there was a script to any of it, but like, what are you doing here? And you and I had not spoken about anything other than the fact that I had long COVID. So I had not shared with you the level of trauma I had experienced by both my parents. And my father had been very sexually abusive. So I immediately understood your trepidation, but was much more really taken by my reaction. That's what I couldn't get over because and it was interesting that you should say, and I don't know again how much I registered in the moment you saying it's a young, healthy version of him, and I don't know um, what that mattered, but I do know that he was approaching me with a unspoken desire for a hug. And what I was aware of in myself, and it was again no thought whatsoever, but pure um, um, genuineness. I felt overjoyed. I felt overjoyed, and I had this kind of like, check this out. I really want to hug him. I really want a hug from him. And I'm aware of like, this is rather amazing. This is really rather unusual. And so we had this very, God, it was so moving. We had such a moving embrace. And it's only afterwards that it dawned on me, and it dawned on me, you know how when truth shows up and you know it's truth? So it dawned on me as like, oh my God, we met spirit to spirit. It had nothing to do with all that shit, chatter, junk, nothing to do with it. And I'm going to take this a step further because this went on way months later and something else happened. And I found myself rethinking that moment and re-questioning that moment. And what happened one night, unbidden, literally unbidden, my father showed up again, same way, showed up. And this time he said to me, I'm so sorry. And I wept and I wept and I wept. And again, over time, the feeling was we both needed that. We both needed that resolution. He does not have to hold on to remorse, and I don't need to hold on to anything. Like, go ahead.
So when you emailed me, I was in tears. The fact, like you're saying, you're witnessing yourself going, wow, this is a big moment. And I'm like, wow, she is such a loving person to be able to, the words you were saying to me and writing to me, like I knew I needed this embrace it. And you did. It was like it shows us when we go to the other side, none of that matters anymore. It's just pure love.
Right.
And you had a love to love connection for who, like, you don't know what his journey was. You were just like, let's just put that aside for who we are, soul to soul, like you said. And that was so healing. At that moment, it was like, let's just shut it all off.
Well, let's be with what's really true, what's really matters. Bottom line.
Love matters.
Yeah,
But that's very profound.
very.
Like, um, in our human self,
Exactly.
we, the triggers, the trauma, what we went through for years, to think in a moment, in one moment, that could just change like that.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Goosebumpy.
Right. And then you got grandma over here going, yep, I'm
Mhm.
right here.
Yeah.
I'm right here. It was so beautiful. So I love how you talk about how this felt so real.
Exactly. I can't I want to emphasize over and over again that what was the most piercing to me is how real the whole thing felt. Even though it's like, there's no evidence for this being real, and yet, I think that's why I keep saying it was below thought. That's why I keep saying that. It's because, this was so, genuinely, genuinely real. No doubt, no doubt. Yeah,
Well, when it touches you on a soul level, you may not be able to explain it, but you can't deny it. And
exactly,
so it's more than what our humanness can understand.
exactly.
But we just
Or
know,
convey.
yes, or convey.
Exactly.
Well, there was one other thing that really came out of nowhere, and I'm burping, was my eyes start fluttering. And I'm like, oh, and they literally were fluttering almost as if somebody else's lashes were on my cheek below mine, fluttering and giving me a butterfly kiss. And I'm like, there's someone that used to do this. It
Mhm.
might just come to your memory, but I did feel it could have been a woman, but I didn't know who.
Yes.
And so, what was that moment for like for you with the butterfly kiss?
So you mentioned, that there was that you felt on your cheek a butterfly kiss, and you left it sort of open because it was very curious. There was not much more information, and frankly, it was like it's puzzling to me. I had absolutely no, associations. I could feel the sweetness of it, but, nothing more. I had an aunt who I absolutely adored. So I wrote to my cousin and I said, her mother, it was her mother, "Did your mother ever give butterfly kisses?" And my cousin says, "No, would never be her thing." So I went, huh, because that would be who would be the most, because I felt the closest to her, that would be the most. And so I let it all sit with me, just sit and sit and sit. And, I think I even wrote this to you, and I said, when my father showed up, I registered that if my mother had shown up, I wouldn't have felt as receptive. And when I let this whole sensation of a butterfly kiss sit in my system, I wondered, it's more like it wouldn't surprise me if it was my mother, and it was like the most, um, soft pedaling, coming forward she could do that I could receive. Like, we could go here. Can you feel this? Can you remember this gentleness? And, so that's how it's been sitting in me, like, I don't know, but that's how it has felt.
What I love about that is you didn't discard it because it didn't mean anything to you. You held it in your sacred cup. You asked, how could I relate to this? Show me.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden, it just felt within you like, well, that would make the most sense.
Yeah.
And then when you have that feeling of, ah, yeah, she had to do it this way, just a little brush, little tinky. Yeah. And by her doing that, she was showing herself without showing herself
Yes.
and saying, you know, I give you a gentle kiss. I do love you. And so
Mhm.
I love that you did sit with it and it feels right, even though you can't explain it, but it's like there's nobody else that can fit into that.
No, I know that feels completely true. That
Right.
feels completely true.
So I have to go to the full completion and then we're going to talk about something else too. Go ahead.
Before we go to the full completion, I don't know that you're gonna ask me about, there was a point that I made a promise to God.
Yes, yes, let's go there.
Go
Yes.
there because that has been probably the most powerful part of the entire healing for me. So, you said you can hear me saying to God, "I promise you and I give you my word." I had no clue. I mean, none whatsoever what what in heaven's name that was all about. The only thing that was real clear to me is that I am not going to come up with any cognitive answer. I have no interest in what I think that might be about. So I'm just going to let it marinate, and when it's time, I will know, and I will know because my heart will be very clear that this is really what I'm promising. So it took about a week, and it was like I could hear God saying to me, trust me. And I was so moved because to me, there in my system, I felt a distinction between loving God, loving what's true, loving what's real, loving what is, and trusting. That did not feel natural to me. That did not feel at my fingertips. That was not available. So I mean, it was almost like I enjoyed the repartee with him. It's like, oh, of course you'd ask me that. Of course,
Well,
because
and I think he did mention the word trust a couple times in the session too. Like he was saying, okay, you know, trust is a big thing. You just, we got to trust what we're going to do now. So that's interesting because I didn't hear the conversation that you guys were really having. I didn't know if you were going to know what it was. So it kind of comes full circle now. Like, he was kind of pushing that through several times until
it
you
went
were
over my
ready.
head.
Yeah, until you were ready for it.
Went over my head. I didn't hear him say that.
Yeah.
And I can say to you, what I will say is that, where what has occurred to me, it's not even occurred, the way it is moving through me is that in my core, and again, so much of long COVID was held in my gut. In my core was a feeling of being a victim. Life did to me. And what showed through this, like, okay, I will do this. I don't know how to do this, but I will do this. Trust. It's like, oh, this is for me. Like long COVID was for me. Because I don't know how else presence could have gotten through to every cell of my being, down to tickling my toes. I don't know how else it could have been done, other than to have to be so still for so long in a sick, unsafe body. I don't know how else it could have happened. And so it's like, oh, okay, this was for me. This was for this, for oneness to be manifest for real, bodily.
And it got you to this space of even having a healing,
Right,
right?
exactly.
So it's like we don't know the blessings that are going to come out of it. I always say, it's not happening against us, it's happening for us. And if we can just try to be patient with it and see what is it teaching us, what is it giving us, this is an opportunity for growth. And this was a huge opportunity for healing on so many levels that it brought you.
Right. Yeah.
And so you just you trusted the process, and look at where you are.
Mhm.
So here we go. At the end, I had taken your picture. Usually in my healing sessions, I place your picture and put it on my abdomen, right? And that's where I become your proxy. But they were working so much in that area, I didn't want the picture to fall, so I placed it above over my head. And so at the end of the session, I'm like, oh, I'm going to bring your picture down. I want to look at you in the eyes as we close. Let me just look at you. And I had this, I was like on cloud nine. Oh my gosh. Because when I was praying for you, you're in the moment. You're looking at the eyes. You're looking not at what you're wearing. You're looking at connecting with soul to soul. You're putting the prayers out. You don't care about anything else but what you wrote me. She has long COVID. God, thank you for healing long COVID. Thank you for healing the gut. But all of a sudden, we're closing up. I look at your picture and you're wearing the long dress I saw you wear in the mirror.
Goosebumps.
Like, what? And tell me, I thought you were wearing a long dress when I saw you in the mirror. Like, this is a celebration. Tell me about the long dress and how you felt when you heard me say this.
When you looked at my photo, I could hear the, glee in your voice. I could hear it's that kind of moment where you go, "Oh my god, it's all true." Right? Look,
Seal the deal.
look, it's really look. And, I had sent you a recent photo of me at my grandson's wedding. It was his wedding, and so we were all dressed up, and it was chocolate brown, but I had a long gown on, and my daughter-in-law, who is a fabulous photographer, had just played with, all sorts of movement and taken this photo, and that's what I sent to you, and it was a joyous celebration, and I was wearing a long chocolate brown dress.
And so I print my pictures out in black and white, so I would not see the color. So
Okay,
I would have known if it was white or if it was black.
got it.
But the fact that they showed me black in the session too, and they knew what was going to happen at
Fantastic.
the end. And so that just shows us how it's really orchestrated. Like this, I have nothing to do with this. God's orchestrating this entire session.
Right.
And it just was like, you're right, completion.
Okay.
Wow. Like, thank you. You just made this whole entire session at this moment, like, whew, like you said, real, right? I
That
could wait for you to hear it. So
does.
one of the things that I loved, this is a phrase that I love and want to use because it was so profound. When the two of you blended together, your healthy self and your sick self, these are the words that said, for God said for you to repeat, I am my whole self again.
Mhm.
Isn't that beautiful?
So beautiful. Um, I wanna say something about that because it is beautiful, it is so moving, and I wanna piggyback on what you just said, that the entire experience was so far beyond anything that I don't think either you or I could comprehend. And so the fact that it would complete that way and the fact that it would give that kind of validation of like, yes, this was something that was very, very fruitful. And two things I want to say about that. One is people ask me a lot, how come you got better? And I don't say it was this healing, even though in my heart, I know it was the healing. And I don't say it because it's too big to really describe, and it most likely cannot be understood, and it doesn't really matter it, to for anybody else to have that kind of information. But the thing that I want to say about what you just said, I am my whole self now. I don't know how many months later, but it was many, many months later. I had a dream, and in the dream, I become aware that I'm getting married. And there's a little bit of like, who am I marrying? And it's indoors and it's not clear, but the officiant is outdoors, and it becomes clear that I need to go outdoors to meet the officiant. And when I go outdoors to meet the officiant, I am in a meadow that is endless. There is literally no boundary to this meadow. And I am aware that I am marrying God, and I am dressed very appropriately. White, sheet-like, long gown, not gown, like a sheet, barefoot, rope tie, garland of flowers in my hair. And God is amorphous. So it's like just enough of a vapor to have the sense of like there's presence here. There's presence. And so I go and stand next to where this presence is standing, and we are standing, and in front of us is the officiant. And I turn to God, and He is flesh and blood from the elbow to the hands so that we can face each other and link arm to arm, hand to hand. And I mean, roses and daisies are just filled on this, bow that we're making. And without any volition on my part, without any thought on my part, without any effort, doesn't even fit in here. I simply glide and move and become one with God. And I can then bear witness to seeing this amorphous presence, and I can see the barest of outlines where I have folded in. And the officiant says, I now pronounce you one.
It like takes my breath away
Thank you.
because um, I've only said this to one person, and that was myself. And I had said, the next person I marry is I don't need to marry anyone. I'm married to God.
Exactly.
And it takes a whole new meaning when you how you're saying that you became one. Your light within just blew up, shined through, and it just doesn't get any better than that.
I know.
It
And
just
I mean, I'm talking to you, so I'm not weeping, but if I weren't talking to you, I would be weeping.
oh yeah, me too. And going back to people saying, "How are you so healthy?" It's so personal that if I share, I'm speaking for you, me, that I have to explain, and it's unexplainable. S-
Yes, exactly.
And so I don't even try to go there.
Exactly.
I'm just like, I've been blessed, you know?
Exactly.
What
It's a
can
whole host of things and time and
and there's only certain people you can share it with too. You have to be careful because you don't want somebody to poo-poo it and then you're like, wait, I don't need that energy to drain me again. I'm in a good space. Yes, I love that. Um, I want to talk about something that happened after your session, like weeks after, and you had kind of an awakening with it.
Mhm.
And it was kind of a pivotal moment, right? Not even knowing that you felt this way, but you had dealt with anxiety for so many years. And describe what happened, where you were at, and how you recognized that anxiety was not the main focus right now.
So the thing that I'm still pinching myself about and um, holding my breath a little bit about is this whole business of anxiety, because I have lived with anxiety in my body my entire life. I'm 81 years old. That's a long time to live with something that just seemed like my breath, absolutely like my breath. One of the things about being sick, and one of the things about being sick for so long without any relief, without any doctor having any idea of how to give relief, without any treatment even being on the horizon, to live with that level of pain, discomfort, and uncertainty, I lived with like a profound anxiety, a profound anxiety. I mean, it was like my body, I just cried and cried and cried and cried. Um, and I don't know, maybe you remember, maybe I wrote this to you, and I'm not remembering right now if there was a moment or it was just a gradual awareness of like, I'm not afraid of being sick any longer. I don't like it, but I'm not afraid of it. And then I would go on with my life and I would realize that, yes, there are times that I would startle. Yes, there were times that I could feel my heart beat a little bit faster, but the hum of anxiety that has been omnipresent wasn't there. It just simply wasn't there. And that's why I go back to when I said, this wasn't happening to me, this was happening for me. It's like, um, and again, this is so fresh and um, would it surprise me if I got anxious again? It wouldn't. Would it delight me if I didn't? Yes, it would. But am I living in a state of like, I'll take what I've got right now and savor it? Yes.
You're standing in it and owning it.
Yeah.
And so when you shared a story with me about how you were at your doctor's office and you walked out to the curb and you were waiting and you had to take an Uber,
Oh, right.
and that was a big moment for you with recognizing that anxiety level would have been panic level and high.
Exactly.
And you were tell me what you felt at that moment standing on that curb. And that was kind of like a huge awakening for you.
Thank you for reminding me. I forgot. Yes. So, I went to my homeopath physician and I don't have a car and so I Ubered and it's a good 30-40 minute Uber ride. And so I'm standing in the parking lot. I finished with my exam with her. I'm in the parking lot and I call for an Uber. And there's all this kind of, we're coming soon, we're not coming soon, we're coming soon, we're not coming soon. And so I realize it doesn't look like they're coming. And so I call a friend and I said, I'm stuck out here. And she says, I'm so sorry. I'm just walking out the door. I can't come for you. And I said, okay. And then the woman who is the receptionist for my physician happened to walk into the parking lot. And I said to her, I'm waiting for an Uber, but nothing is showing up. And now it's a good 30 minutes.
Oh,
Okay, good 30 minutes. And so she said, there's a company um, somewhere, call them and they can give you a ride. So I called them and they said, I'm so sorry. We absolutely have no cars. We can't help you. Okay. So I said to them, do you have any other suggestions? I'm stranded out here. And they gave me a number of someone in another town. So I called the person in the other town, and it's a person that answers, and the person says, I can't get to you for 25 minutes. And I said, that's fine. Just come get me. So he did come get me in 25 minutes, and $100 later, he drops me off. But what I realize is that not only was there not an ounce of anxiety or panic, because there would have been panic, what really got my attention is that I was resourceful, that I was clear enough to go from A to B to C to D and find my way home. So, yeah, I'm really glad you reminded me of that because I had completely forgotten. And I've had many different instances or experiences like that. It's like these kinds of things would have knocked my clock. Like, you know?
when you said you got married to God,
Yeah.
not only did the love come through you and your light shine brighter, but you have a peace within you now.
Exactly.
It's,
Ex
and where do we end it? What did God say? You have a trust now that no
Yeah.
matter what's happening to you, there's no need to worry. It's all going to work out, even if it's an Uber. You trusted it. You
Yes.
didn't have anxiety, and you knew it was all going to work out. God has your back. You're not even thinking that.
Yeah.
But if you look at the whole picture now of where you came from and where you are now, you
Mm.
are trusting.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That is really beautiful, Deborah. Yeah. I love the way, you're like seeing it through somebody else's eyes, hearing it through somebody else's ears, and having words that I don't have, and like going, yeah,
I
yeah,
see it through a different lens.
exactly.
Yeah. And it's just, I'm just like, was touched from the beginning with your session. I was touched getting your email. And I know that you're like, I really don't want to be on screen, but you trusted it. And I have to say, you are an incredible speaker. And I can't thank you enough for your time sharing and hearing it, you know, being able to witness and hearing it live with you. It's it's not that it makes it more real, but it just even touches me on another deeper sense of myself, like within, like, wow, that we have this strong of a connection.
Exactly. I so get that. I feel the same way. I feel the very same way. It brings in a whole new dimension to what you and I just did. What God did. And you and I got to participate.
We got to participate
Got
in
to
such a beautiful, miraculous
participate.
session that touched on emotionally, physically, and spiritually, past trauma, you know, things for your future, and now just being able to be present in the now. I mean, uh, peace is priceless.
Priceless, priceless. And Deborah, I'll tell you, I don't think I ever told you this, how I even came to you. So I somebody I see, I work spiritually and psychologically with people. And someone in passing says to me, I had a session with this woman named Deborah Martin. I don't even remember what he said. I don't remember the context of why he said it. All I remember is everything in me going, remember that name. Don't forget that name. Check her out. And that's how I came to you.
Wow. See, that person was put on your path just for that moment to hear my name.
Exactly. That's how the whole thing worked.
And you
Truly.
trusted it.
Oh, when it comes to me like that, when intuition shows up like that, that is easy to trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Deborah. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.